This episode was originally recorded in German and transformed into this voiceover version with the help of artificial intelligence and some manual input. We're not quite where we'd like to be in terms of quality yet. However, we firmly believe that AI is constantly improving, and we're getting better at using this tool to produce great results in the future. So, if you speak German, it's definitely worth checking out the original version of this episode on the German Flight Club podcast.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum
Hi, and welcome to the Flight Club of the Flight Levels Academy, where you can meet people and learn about topics related to flight levels. I am Klaus Leopold, and our guest today in the show is Andreas Rein. It's actually Dr. Andreas Rein. Let's take the time.
Muss sein. Hallo Andreas.
Hi, Andreas.
Hallo Klaus, da hast du mit einem
Hello, Klaus. You started with a nice, punny rhyme. I'm very happy about that.
Very nice, exactly. Today we want to chat a bit, and the big headline is moving away from hierarchies towards network organizations.
Das klingt ja schon mal sehr.
Yes, that sounds extremely cool. Prior to diving straight into the subject, Andreas, would you mind sharing some information about yourself with us? What do you actually do all day long?
Boah, das ist eine gute Frage. Das frage ich
That is a good question.
auch.
Occasionally, I genuinely ponder about that as well. I assist organizations in altering their processes and structures in a manner that makes them more lightweight, flexible, and adaptable.
Das ungeliebte Wort agil.
One could almost utilize the unpopular term agile to describe it.
Damit beschäftige ich mich den ganzen Tag.
And that's what I do all day.
Ich versuche zu
That means I'm trying to understand how the organization works today.
verstehen, vor welcher
I'm trying to understand what challenge it is facing.
gemeinsam mit
And then, together with the responsible individuals in the organization, to consider what actually needs to change in order to transform the organization.
das dann
And then implement the necessary steps for that.
Das heißt, es geht um
Okay,
Organisationsveränderung.
this means it is primarily about organizational change. Now, I assume that you did not come into the world with the specific intention of becoming an organizational changer. What did you actually learn? So what is your background? Where are you from?
wäre eine spannende Frage an
It would be an exciting question to ask my mother whether I was born an organizational changer,
die wird sich nicht erklären lassen.
but it cannot be explained. But no, of course you're right, I'm not.
Schüler auf die Welt,
I was born as an average student who has achieved an average high school diploma,
der immer dem Minimax-Prinzip
who always followed the Minimax principle and then let himself be guided by what he enjoyed, which was actually a good decision.
Informatik studiert.
I studied computer science.
In
I started programming shop systems in the 1990s, when this internet came up and didn't go away anymore.
habe dann festgestellt, dass ich
Then I realized that I am somewhat of a mediocre developer.
nicht schlecht,
Not bad, but passionless.
gut bin im Projektmanagement,
But that I am good at project management.
gut darin bin, komplett
That I am simply good at grasping complex things.
Projektmanagement.
And then I did project management in a very classic way. For 10 years.
Im Rahmen
I also became self-employed at some point within the framework of this traditional project management.
externer Projektmanagement.
I worked as an external project manager for different organizations, aiming to gain a deeper understanding of them.
Betriebswirtschafts
Then I also studied business administration. Had before mine.
hatte vor meinem Informatik
He mentioned that he pursued computer science as his major, but he was an average student and eventually left law school without completing his studies.
als Master of Laws.
I completed that as a Master of Laws in 2010, and then I did my doctorate PhD in economics, or business administration in the wonderful field of coaching as a leadership style in project management.
Ja, heute würde man Agile Coaching sagen.
Today you would say agile coaching, but in 2010 there was no such term yet.
Durch war,
Yes, and when I was done with it at some point, I thought to myself, after narrowing down or circling projects, technically, computer science, structurally, business administration, socio-politically with legal theory, I thought to myself, man, there are still people.
also das ist ja
So that's absolutely crazy. I can't get rid of her either. Then I also studied psychology.
so ein 38.
So I am a student with a total of 38 semesters.
Madness. There was a lot included. I have taken computer science. Something to do with law was involved. Then I decided to pursue a PhD in business administration and psychology just to be on the safe side. Very nice. That is quite a solid background on which you can build.
Aufbauen kannst. Unsere Wege haben sich ja vor Jahren.
Our paths came together and crossed decades ago. You could almost say it was quite some time in the past. I remember that was in a Kanban training session, and I got to know you as a Lean Six Sigma black belt.
Sigma, Lean Six Sigma Black Belt hat das, glaube ich, geheißen. Stimmt das?
Genau.
Is that true? Exactly.
Meine Erfahrung
Now, my experience on the subject is completely limited.
viel mit Zahlen.
That's a lot of numbers. Yes, yes, yes.
Ja, Das ist es tatsächlich.
Yes, it really is.
Im Prinzip kommt
This is a method of ensuring quality that is fundamentally based on the analysis of statistics.
ich schaue mir die
I am looking at the performance of a particular process. I basically measure throughput speeds.
Ich lege einen
I set a default value for the quality and then measure the deviation from this quality, and then try to predict how accurate the production equipment is in terms of quality and thus in avoiding wear and tear.
Vermeiden von Verschleiß Produktionsmittel sind. Also es geht hier wirklich
So we're really talking about machines that bend sheet metal.
also so richtig
In other words, really hard material.
uns kennengelernt.
Okay.
Exactly. That's where we met.
2010 war das?
In 2010, I was anchored in the world of Six Sigma, and we met in 2014.
2014.
Alles klar. Ja. Und,
All right, Six Sigma, but you say sheet metal bending.
wir haben uns
That means we met at a Kanban training course back then.
damals kennengelernt. Aber da geht es ja nicht so sehr, also bei dem
But in the Kanban I did previously,
das war ja nicht
it was not about sheet metal bending, so to speak, but it was about knowledge work. That means this Lean Six Sigma, did you use it in knowledge work or rather in sheet metal bending?
Tatsächlich
I have actually translated many elements of Six Sigma into knowledge work, and I believe that if you sit down and work on it with great enthusiasm and time, you could get a lot more out of it.
dann auch noch viel mehr rausholen. Was mir an Six Sigma so gut gefällt,
What I appreciate about Six Sigma is simply this 5-step process.
ja, so wie du
So I prefer to work in iterations, just like you and like everyone who operates in dynamic environments. And that's essentially what Six Sigma is all about.
ich ja diesen D-Make.
I'm actually following this DMATE process.
Was will ich eigentlich verändern?
So define, what do I actually want to change, and it's a damn good idea to think beforehand what you actually want to do. At that point, it is truly astonishing how often that doesn't happen.
Measure.
Then measure, where am I actually standing in this particular situation?
D-Make. Analysiere. Ja.
Analyze what actions can I take, implement the desired change, and establish control. Measure again to determine if what you wanted to change has actually been successfully changed.
Zyklus, der ist
That's not with monastery. Somehow,
das Gefühl, noch an
I have the feeling that I have heard this somewhere else before.
Ja, wollte gerade sagen, so,
I was just about to say, I have no idea which cycles we currently have, where the loop is located. There are various ones. I am not really a specialist, but the basic idea of iteration is there too.
und ich meine, okay, wenn ich das jetzt
And when I hear that now, what you are saying, Kanban is also not infinitely far away from either.
hat mich dann eigentlich
What actually motivated you to enter this world of Kanban?
Also ich kannte
So I already knew Kanban before you, but actually more from this engineering. So from this really hanging on signal card and bending sheet metal around the field.
mich hat
And a co-worker of mine at that time, he mentioned, I'm attending a Kanban training, fantastic opportunity, at Leanability. Would you be interested in joining? And I said, no. So Kanban, I've heard that before.
dann hat
And then he somehow pulled on me, and then I managed to break free and get away.
und diese Idee,
This
diese Idee,
This concept, we use virtual work, so we employ knowledge work, make it visible and then model everything around it as if it were sheet metal.
war und modellieren dann alles außenrum so als ob es Blech wäre. Ja? Also wir bauen einen Prozess.
So we are constructing a process, enabling this virtual asset to pass through this process, measuring the velocities of the flow, since there are already metrics stored as well.
Also das war für mich,
So that was a real eye-opener for me. It was great.
das war irgendwie
That was similar to Lean Six Sigma, only for living people.
ja.
As a Six Sigma person, you have to be a statistician, you have to want to do some calculations in Minitab.
zu nehmen. Und das hast du in Kanban halt nicht. Das
And you did not have that in Kanban. This is much more empirical and I found it incredibly tangible.
Cool, ja.
Okay, cool.
So you were apparently somehow interested in the topic because you were also involved in, I think, the very first round of the enterprise campaign coach that Siggy Kaltenegger and I did back then.
Das ist quasi so, was
That's more or less what the flight levels coach is today. Or rather, the flight levels coach program was this enterprise campaign coach, the precursor, so to speak, to this thing. What was the actual motivation behind your decision to participate in the program? Because it is indeed a significant commitment, a training that spans approximately 6 months, involving repeated meetings and covering a wide range of topics.
Du
You had during the enterprise Kanban coaching, that was at the beginning such a feeling, which I had. I mean, I have completed these 2-3 trainings here and then this decision, okay, there needs to be more, I need to understand more, I need to gain more experience. I had that, which was driven by the feeling that for the first time, I would acquire a tool that enables me to actively discuss my approaches to organizational development, because it is visualized.
Cool. All
of a sudden, I find myself capable of going and creating visible representations of these crazy abstract ideas of value streams. I can make them discussable, I can make them measurable, and I can even fold little boats, all as simple as it all is. People suddenly understood what I wanted, and that took away this level of abstraction, and that was the way it was for me. I had the feeling that it would be like that, and yes, that's how I got there.
So bin ich da hingekommen und das war für mich der Grund.
And that was the reason for me to make this commitment. In the beginning, as I said, it was the feeling that this could be it. And while doing it, it was confirmed. I have been given a means to be able to discuss something very abstract. And I found that incredibly helpful. And I find that very helpful.
Ja, genau. Ja.
Yes, exactly. This is something that I also find very important.
Sehr wichtig finde. Also man kann natürlich immer relativ.
Of course, you can always talk relatively cleverly and then nobody understands it. Or, what I always find charming, the world is incredibly complex, and of course, you must not oversimplify it in any way. But nevertheless, that somehow the complex things, which are not really intuitive the first time, which may be counterintuitive. So all the topics that are inside this river world. So if everyone works with people 100%, work will be very slow to finish. If we work rapidly, work becomes sluggish. That sounds like he hasn't taken his pills. However, if we are able to effectively communicate these counterintuitive concepts in a clear and engaging manner, it is something that motivates me. I also believe that it motivates you when people experience you in trainings and similar situations, with the goal of making things easily understandable. You did not actually stop in this Kanban world, and by the way, you were also one of the first Flight Levels guides. The Flight Levels Academy was established at some point during the year 2020, and subsequently, the subject of flight levels started to be formalized in a professional manner. Also, in the sense of, okay, there are now somehow a few training formats, workshops all around, and you were again one of the first to be there, if not the first. What was the reason that prompted you to do that?
Well, you have already mentioned flight levels in the years 2014 and 2015. I don't know exactly. I think that is how it started. On the one book at your place, there are still 4, I believe. But none of it matters because discussing it again is the topic. What you described is that we consistently have the same process or we consistently have the same form of visualization. We always have a value stream. And in reality, the only difference that exists is the segmentation of the work items or the flight items, as we prefer to say, within the process that we follow. So when I'm at flight level 3 in the strategy at the very top, when I look at it, I see really big work items. Logically, I see the initiatives, the giants, the programs within the organization. When I look at flight level 1, I see the tasks, the assignments of the individuals. However, the functionality, the systematics, how I handle it, is consistently identical. We have 3 flight levels for our activities. Point. And maybe a bit of system architecture to know how things are connected. But basically that's it. That means I provide a very simple set of rules that I repeat over and over again and with which I can build an entire organization. That brings us to my topic, where we actually came from, the other side, this agile organizational structure. Using flight levels, I possess a technique that enables me to make this process repetitive. I enjoy discussing fractal organization and fractal organizational structure, as it allows me to depict and delve into it further. And that is easy to understand. We have been talking about network organizations, or that has been in the literature since 2005, 2006. I don't know. So for a long time.
Wie modelliert man die eigentlich? Wenn ich
How do you model them?
spreche, von einem Neuron,
When I talk about a network, a neural network, I need something like a neuron.
irgendwie so eine
So I somehow need a nerve cell.
Organisation.
What does it look like in the organization?
Ist aus den Flight
And that suddenly becomes explainable from the flight levels.
in diesem Dreiklang.
It is consistently present in this triad.
Immer noch,
I constantly maintain a strategy, I perpetually maintain a flow that represents the complete value stream of this neuron, and I consistently have an operative where I observe what needs to be actually done.
so. Und das habe ich beim
So, and I have that with every employee in the organization.
der oder die hat auch
He or she also has their own strategy.
im Team, wo er
I possess it in the team where he or she works, in the organizational unit in which the team is banned, in the national company, and so on.
diesen Dreiklang.
Always this triad.
Ich rede zu
Sorry.
viel.
Nein,
Sorry. No, everything is fine. You are already all in. I think that's cool.
Dreiklang.
With this underlying tone, I can model everything that is the magic of the whole thing for me.
Sache. Ja, weil es ist leicht.
It is simple to portray and discuss without needing to acquire a lot of knowledge.
Sehr cool. Du bist jetzt schon
Very cool. You have already delved quite deep now. I will get you out again now, because there were a few pretty cool topics there, where I think we will take another look. So I observed something resembling a network organization. Then I observed something resembling a fractal structure, with neurons being involved and hierarchies being considered foolish.
Jetzt versuchen wir mal die Themen so
Let's attempt to analyze the topics separately.
aufzudröseln, ja?
So, regarding the topic of hierarchies, if we currently have the headline, all right, moving away from hierarchies towards a network organization, if we distance ourselves from hierarchies, that implies to me that hierarchies are not the ultimate wisdom. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to move away. What is the actual downside of hierarchies in organizations?
Also schlecht an der Hierarchie ist,
The problem with the hierarchy lies in the manner in which the hierarchy is initially established.
also wenn ich so eine Pyramide
So if I have a pyramidal hierarchy, then there is a highly traditional organization situated at the top, characterized by a medium size, being family-run, or of a similar nature.
in der Pyramidalhierarchie
Then I have the sun god sitting at the top of the pyramidal hierarchy.
alles weiß,
This is the person who knows everything, who decides everything, who does everything.
das ist der weise Übung.
And that is the way through father or the way through mother, whatever.
Oder halt auch nicht.
Or perhaps it is not the case.
Oder halt auch
And regrettably, in numerous instances, it is not the case at all.
wenn er oder sie
Even if he or she were the wise father or the wise mother, he or she would still have a limited range of decision-making ability.
die Bandbreite an Entscheidungsfähigkeit. Das heißt, wenn die Anzahl der
That means, if the number of decisions that need to be made to ensure the organization's operational continuity increases, and I have the feeling that it does in recent years, digitalization, globalization, everything becomes more dynamic. That means decisions have to be made faster, then this central brain is definitely the limiting factor.
wenn es intelligent
Even if it is intelligent enough to know everything, which I don't believe in, it is too slow to know everything.
Hierarchie kann
So hierarchy cannot be useful, so it cannot be the best solution for the organization.
und nehmen wir noch an
Let's assume, for the last point, that we had one.
bestimmte
I
Organisationen.
don't have any specific organization in mind at all.
Ich wäre der Überfall.
Let's say I were the superfather of a textile company and would also say that working from home is not important to me.
So Leute gibt es ja.
There are such people.
Der darf halt nie sterben.
He simply cannot ever die.
Ja, weil
And that is bad because you cannot replace someone of that caliber.
mag ja sein, dass er die
Well, it may be true that he built up the entire organization, that he knows every single screw in the organization, but this person is irreplaceable.
Weggang sein.
With his departure, even if it's just from,
Und
well, yes, everyone dies.
bricht diese Organisation zu.
Then this organization collapses.
Okay, difficult then.
Also Hierarchie
Also hierarchy difficult central brain. At some point it becomes too much. Now you're talking about the network organization.
das heißt, wir
In other words, we are now somehow breaking down the hierarchy and linking it more laterally.
das lateraler? Gibt es da überhaupt, also was bedeutet das überhaupt jetzt?
What does this network organization mean now?
Hierarchien.
Are there no hierarchies in your conception of network organizations?
Hierarchien gibt es.
Sure, there are hierarchies.
Hierarchie steuern
So if hierarchy means control, it definitely exists in some form.
gibt es natürlich.
Of course, there are clock generators.
Leider, auch übergreifend.
There are also decision makers, even overarching decision makers, of course.
Hoffentlich.
But hopefully these individuals are decision makers not based on hierarchy, but based on their competence.
Wäre es denn, wenn die Leute
Imagine if the organization's experts could make decisions within their expertise.
Expertise vollumfänglich
That would be really cool,
man
right?
sagt, die wissen es am besten.
Because they say they know best.
Ja, wie gesagt, das heißt nicht, dass nicht
As I previously mentioned, that does not imply that someone might not keep an eye on the overall structure in order to ensure they stay within the flight levels.
wir haben ein Team.
Let's assume we have a team.
Dieses Team mag
This team enjoys making decisions collectively about its actions.
wenn sich
At flight level 2, when teams coordinate, I can imagine having someone who also determines within the framework of this team coordination.
hierarchische.
This is indeed a hierarchical decision, but by competence, because one can make decisions based on content.
Es ist auch wichtig, dass Menschen Strategien
It is important that people make strategy and consider where the organization should develop.
bitte, weil sie wissen,
However, please, because they possess the knowledge and expertise, not because they were haphazardly promoted and are now trapped in their positions and can't be got rid of.
werden sind. Ja, weil die Anzahl der Stühle wird
Due to increasing chair count.
nach oben.
Upwards in the pyramid. Yes, smaller.
Also wohl wahr. Apropos
By the way, hierarchies and flight levels. The flight levels in some way are perceived as hierarchical. We somehow have flight level 1, the teams, then we have flight level 2, the middle management in numerous heads, and flight level 3, the bosses of the bosses. And I think that is also one of the difficulties with flight levels, that often the work chart is used and it is simply touched smoothly onto the flight levels. So according to the motto, okay, fit's done, flight levels is just how we work all the time. But it's not exactly the punchline behind it, but we also want, if I now strain the word network, we also want to connect the right people, especially at flight level 2. With flight level 2, you can theoretically build a virtual organization. That means you are not attacking your organizational structure, but you are endeavoring to bring individuals together in some kind of synchronization and coordinate them with each other so that the right people are working on the right topics at the right time.
Ja, und das ist eben auch.
And this is entirely separate from the workshop and entirely separate from any organizational hierarchy.
Ist das ähnlich?
Is it the same when discussing network organization, which I attempted to cram into Flightwork 2?
Mit dem Flightwork 2 versucht habe reinzureimen?
Ja, das ist nicht ähnlich.
Yes, that is not similar.
Genau das.
That is exactly it.
Ja, also, natürlich bilden, also
Of course, therefore, that the three.
das wie soll man sagen, dreistufig klingt
The model for flight levels, consisting of 3 levels and 3 parts, does not depict an organizational hierarchy. Instead, it represents a hierarchy of tasks that I need to accomplish within each individual network node.
der Dinge, die ich tun muss, aber in jedem einzelnen Netzwerkknoten. Und der Netzwerkknoten in der Organisation.
And the network node in the organization, the neuron, can indeed be the individual employee.
Und auch der einzelne Mitarbeitende.
And each employee also has a strategy.
Er hat vielleicht
He may not have a strategy in words and works it out himself.
Jeder hat für sich
But everyone also has for themselves, like how do I want to develop, what else do I want to do?
Arbeitsfluss in seinen Prozess.
Everyone has their workflow, process, and activity.
Genau das Gleiche hat.
And the team has precisely the identical.
finde diesen Dreiklang.
That signifies, I come across this triad strategy, coordinative level and operative level, in every place.
Die ganze Organisation.
When I look at the whole organization, I have a strategy, and when I look at the individual, I also have a strategy.
Das ist das Fraktal.
And this is the fractal you were referring to earlier, correct? Additionally, a fractal is a self-similarity, Mandelbrot. You are aware.
Wenn wir uns eine
So when we imagine a traditional organization, a fitting image that describes it for me is always that of a clockwork mechanism.
ja?
Yes.
Zahnräder, die
So, you have gears that mesh together, and these gears drive each other.
idealerweise machen sie das in.
Ideally, they do this in unison.
Dann läuft
This ensures smooth operation of the organization without any disruptions.
das Zahnrad.
However, every gear is forged specifically for its unique task, indicating that each gear possesses a distinct and specialized function.
Kannst du die Höhe
With this you can achieve the highest efficiency.
perfekt läuft.
If this clockwork runs perfectly, you only have components in it that master their task perfectly.
Aber versuch mal die Funktionsweise
But try changing the functioning of a clockwork mechanism.
zu verändern.
Just try to modify the running speed.
Funktioniert halt nicht.
That just doesn't work.
So designte
And
Organisation.
if I now have an organization designed like a clockwork and then suddenly I realize, I have no idea. As part of digitization someone has introduced international internet time and the hour now has 100 minutes.
Dann ist es völlig egal, ob meine Uhr.
Then it doesn't matter at all whether my watch cost €5 or €50,000. It won't display the time correctly and I can't change it either, or only with a huge effort. When we analyze how agility was implemented in the organization, we somehow witnessed the first wave of agility in the 1990s, where teams were suddenly empowered with new methodologies. Subsequently, we came to the realization that the teams also have to collaborate. So frameworks were constructed that are organized in a manner similar to these gears. So when I look at the large scaling frameworks, I also see special functions everywhere. And no matter where I look, I always have to learn first, okay, how do they do it there? How does it work there? And as a consequence, this leads to the formation of enormous complex structures. Agile work may be done within the frameworks. But when we talk about business agility, which is the adaptability of the entire organization, then these frameworks are just as rigid as the old organizations. And if we desire to move towards business agility, we must discuss other forms of organizational structure. And that is exactly it. We need repetitive elements. So a tree doesn't consist of a trunk and then someone attaches a branch and then everyone sticks leaves on it. And if I want to scale the thing, I'll add another branch. However, that is something organic. Organic only works fractally. That signifies I have a direction that repeats in a permanent manner. Therefore, Benoit Mandelbrot authored this remarkable book, The Fractal Geometry of Nature, in which he, oh wonder, states that a cloud is not simply a circle like in Euclidean geometry, or a fir tree is not a triangle, but rather they are structures that repeat, and the closer I get, the more self-similar it becomes as I approach it. And with this triad of strategy, coordination, and operations, I can build an organization from individuals to a global corporation and observe, control, and measure the flow of work through the organization. For me, that is organizational development.
Yes, I find that extremely, extremely beautiful. I firmly believe the positive news is that I am completely convinced that the time for these frameworks and methods is over. More and more organizations are coming up that the stuff doesn't work anyway. So you blow hundreds of thousands, occasionally millions of euros, somehow implement people and say, now it just has to wave like this, because then everything will be fine. And oh happiness, oh wonder, not everything will be fine, because it is not, as you say, organically grown or something, but rather according to the same mechanic mindset. There we have a malfunctioning organization. Now the mechanic has to come and replace the gears. Oh, what a nice picture of you, Andreas. At present, we have aluminum gears in place of these steel gears. I have no idea, as I'm not familiar with such materials and their properties. But then the mechanic comes by, fixes it, and then the factory runs again. So let's just write agile on it. But I believe that time is really over. More and more organizations are realizing that not burning coal doesn't do much. Naturally, it feels good. You have accomplished something. This is comparable to when I ride an e-bike once a week for an hour on flat terrain, and then I go eat a pork roast and drink 5 beers. It feels good. So you have done something beneficial for your health. This entire Agile framework presently feels the same to me. And I believe that flight level is precisely the counterpoint there, specifically with the organic. So we do not say, okay, take your organization, we will take it apart and say we are going to rebuild it completely from scratch. But we start in an area where we say, okay, that is where it is crunching somehow in the gearbox. And as you mentioned, we have our 3 levels, the 5 activities. And then the thing begins to expand naturally within the organization. And I have not thought about it like that yet. Now in the conversation, I truly notice this organic growth. When the mechanic comes or the engineer comes, they simply set it up again. I am a little excited at the moment, as you can hear. However, I believe that is precisely where I locate the flight levels. You just took me somewhere with the organic, and I think that is very cool.
Cool, das freut mich.
Cool, I am glad. By the way, that leads to another thought. So if we now agree that only an organic organization can grow,
nur die kann wachsen. Ja, alles andere kannst du vergrößern.
You can enlarge everything else.
Etwas, was Strukturen hat.
Something can only grow if it has structures that can grow repetitively.
Dann heißt das aber auch,
However, that also implies that you have I do not even know whether that was a book or something that occurred before.
Kommt doch dieser Spruch,
This saying comes from you, business agility is not a team sport, but rather a sport that involves the entire company.
ja,
Agreed.
genau, ja. Das ist Business-Agilität.
Business agility, and that is the significant distinction from now on in this third wave of agility, is completely different from the initial two waves of agility.
Auch nicht jeder agile Coach.
And not every agile coach has grasped that concept thus far.
Welle der Agilität.
In the initial wave of agility, the emphasis was on methodologies for teams.
Zweiten ging es die großen
In the second one, it was about the major frameworks.
Business-Agilität geht's
But in the third one, in business agility, it's no longer about work.
Haltung.
It's about attitude.
Ja. Es geht wie denke ich
It's about, how do I think about organization? How do I understand organization? Can I actually detach myself from my hierarchy or from my organizational chart? And can I really model the flow of work through the organization with a flight level, so that I create value in my mind with the flight level model?
Das ist Haltung,
This is attitude, psychology, it is primarily the mindset of the people.
Flight Levels.
Teaching flight levels to individuals, I do not think that is a particularly difficult task.
Dass es halt getan wird.
But that's how it's done.
However, to experience it, that is a game changer.
Game Changer.
Yes, yes, yes.
Ja.
Ja.
Aber man merkt ja auch, wo sich, glaube ich,
You can also witness where I believe the entire topic is heading.
von
So I can only report from my own flight path, so to speak.
wir machen jetzt nicht,
We don't do an endless number of training courses and have no idea.
und keine Ahnung, natürlich, du hast irgendwo...
Certainly,
wie
as you
gesagt, man
mentioned,
muss das
it is imperative to effectively communicate the underlying concept of the flight levels, as they may appear deceptively simpler than they truly are. Well, it is just tempting. We have these 3 levels and everything fits perfectly, easy peasy. However, in all other respects, it is indeed a remarkably lightweight approach, where one provides targeted coaching, precisely assisting individuals in implementing it into their day-to-day actions and routines.
Das ist so,
And I also hold the belief that this is the essence of business agility.
ich glaube,
As you rightly say, I share the same perspective that it is fundamentally different from agility or agility on a large scale. It's about something different. It's about my relocation as a situation within the organization in the elastic market. I am currently attempting, I believe, to move the word agility slightly to the side because it consistently activates that old world. So that's exactly what triggers the, yeah, right, then we have a stand-up meeting, then all will be fine. Yes, and so this, yes, so I dare.
Also traue ich mich das sagen jetzt?
In my perspective, I strongly believe that the world of agility, just like the world of large frameworks, is slowly approaching its end and making room for something else. And perhaps this is in some way related to the organic matter, but I'm fantasizing now because your statements stimulate me.
Deine Aussagen stimulieren mich. Ich bin mal mutig. Ne?
I'm brave for once.
Finde ich großartig.
In my opinion, I think it is great because actually, that is something that I have decided for myself personally.
Vergiss das mit dem Agilität.
Forget about agility, nobody really cares.
Auch das ist ja ein
This is also an approach that you advocated in the flight levels right from the start.
Erstmal.
First inquire about your specific improvement goals, as the flight levels framework is designed to address the questions you pose and provide relevant answers. There are countless potentialities for how I shape my flight level systems.
Ich sollte sie so modellieren, dass
I should model them in such a way that I get an answer to the question I have, so that I can manage my own business.
muss ich natürlich wissen, was ich
Of course, I need to know what topic I actually have. Thank you.
Absolut.
The fundamental aspects, dogmatic nature, and what annoys me about agility in the first place.
in erster Linie. Das ist ja nicht falsch, um Gottes Willen.
That's not wrong, for God's sake.
Agile Manifest.
So, I come across the Agile Manifesto.
Sätze drin, die
There are sentences in it that I find great.
die Zahl,
Also minimize the number, minimize the amount of unfinished work.
ein Satz, den liebe
This is such a sentence, I love it so much.
Evergreen. Additionally, he does not age, I believe.
aber dieses
Exactly, but this fundamental dogmatic, one must and then one must do a stand-up, I don't care.
sich
People need to exchange ideas.
ja.
Ja.
Yes, above all, it also has to grow organically somehow. It always seems to me that you put something in front and say, okay, stick to this blueprint, to this whole set of rules, then it will get better. However, the crucial aspect is that you personally create the experiences, that you naturally and organically reach that point, and that, when you use the term agility, it is understood and interpreted in a manner that is most advantageous for our needs. And precisely, the primary objective is that we desire to respond situationally to the market conditions. And okay, that appears different for one organization than the other organization. It also makes a fundamental difference whether I program a web shop or whether I am an infrastructure organization that builds tunnels. They will likely turn in a slightly different manner, hopefully. However, if we state, all right, we desire to respond situationally in the market, and the path to get there and also the specific shape must appear different. That cannot be the same original. The web shop would be like that. I construct trains. Currently killing agility, but still pretty cool.
We don't kill them. We take them to a new level. We expand the. Agility is not only about the method, but also about the attitude. The individuals themselves become more agile, which implies being more open, self-reflective. The methods are not the issue. We all can, at this moment in Germany and Austria, we are able to, so I intend, they have the ability to engineer here. So that is not the problem. The issue is that individuals are unable to work or have a lack of education. The issue is elsewhere, and it's in people's minds. How do I arrange this task? How do I effectively handle this task?
Sure. We do not have to eliminate anything, I believe. What will ultimately prevail is whatever manages to work in some way or another in the end. Oh, yeah. Well, dear Andreas, we can tell you one more thing. You are also working as a writer. Is that rumor true? That's right. And there is a book that is currently being printed, if I understand correctly. I hope this is still true when we broadcast this podcast. However, could you please provide a brief description or share some insights about the book? What's it about? What is it called?
Make some advertising. With pleasure. So the book is called Agile Organizational Design. A very, very boring title. With the subtitle The Development of a Capable Organization. That makes it a little more thrilling. That is precisely what it is all about, the way I actually build an organization in a dynamic and organic manner. What does it mean to have similar elements oneself? What does it mean to have structures that are repetitive? What requirements does it place on people to think in this completely fractal way? And what is organic growth actually? How does a neural network actually work, and so on? Yes, so that's the idea of this book, which will hopefully be published in December. Will appear, so.
Absolutely. Very nice. And in the preliminary conversation, I managed to acquire a few books specifically for you. I take the rumor that we are also permitted to hold a raffle for a few books, which would be for the benefit of the listeners. Very nice. We have 3 books. Let's throw it into the ring. And yes, if you are interested in the book written by Andreas, please send an email to flightclub@flightlevels.io. Feel free to reach out to Flight Club at flightlevels.io and kindly provide us with a creative explanation of why you are interested in the topic discussed in this book. Yes, exactly. We will send a total of 3 books.
Yes, was gibt es sonst noch zu sagen?
Yes, what else is there to say? Otherwise, yes, Andreas, you are Flight Levels Guide, also of the Flight Levels Academy. You consistently organize workshops, trainings, and other related events. Dear listeners, if you are interested in further educating yourself on the topic of flight levels, or if you require support, Andreas is the person to reach out to at FlightLevels.io. Among the guides or professionals, you can also take a look at his profile and then proceed to contact him directly. Well, from my point of view, that's it so far.
Wie ist das soweit, lieber Andreas?
Dear Andreas, how are you feeling after this conversation?
Es war bei weitem nicht so schlimm wie
However, it was not as terrible as I had anticipated.
Das war sehr
No, it was actually quite enjoyable.
Klaus,
Thank you, Klaus, for the invitation.
schön, dass das
I think it's really nice that the Flight Club format is alive and that we are in this format.
wir in diesem Format
Of course, I am grateful that I was able to speak here now and also do a little advertising for myself. But I am also looking forward to the fact that probably many other great people who are deeply involved with flight levels, and sometimes completely different perspectives will have their say here, and yes, that you can follow a little bit of this whole community, even if you are not closely involved.
das finde ich großartig.
I think that's great.
Cool.
Very nice.
Dank, lieber Andreas,
Awesome.
für deine Zeit.
Well, thank you so much, Andreas, for your time. And indeed, we will definitely meet each other in person once more in the near future.
Ja.
And yes, that's it for today. On that note, goodbye.
In diesem Sinne.
Wiedersehen.
Thank you for listening to the Flight Levels podcast. Subscribe now to be updated for the next episode. Did this podcast remind you of anybody? Share the link with that person that you think should also join the Flight Club. And join our free community to have access to a lot of free content as well as direct contact with all the coaches and members. Visit our web to create your account and more information. Go to flightlevels.io.